You guys have been Jesus Christ, thanks for the $5 donation. You're doing great, sweetie. Drink your water, eat your veggies. Thank you. I love you, my friend. Beth the Brave, I appreciate it. I love you. Thank you for $5. You guys have been demanding, absolutely demanding that I cover Kalvin Garrah for literal months now. I think the last time I covered him was way back when I first started, like a year ago. And I remember I was on Twitch when I did it, and my stream was so unbelievably scuffed. My arguments were nowhere near as good as they are now. But hey, it's a year later. My powers have doubled since last we met, Kalvin Garrah. And yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and react to this. What the fuck stream? God, my fucking OBS is getting like all kinds of fucked up. All right, so this video is by Kalvin Garrah. It's called "My Honest Opinion on Non-Binary." So I'm excited to see what Kalvin Garrah's honest opinion on non-binary people is, and we're just gonna take a good old look. So let's do it.
So for some reason, the intro to this video...
Whoa, why are you lagging? Come on. I got 32 gigs of RAM on this rig. You can handle it.
So for some reason, the intro to this video glitched when I was filming.
Oh,
so
okay.
Hey guys, Kalvin here, welcome.
I thought it was my end for a second, because usually this would happen where like my video would freeze whenever I would start a new video back when I had like 8 gigs of RAM, and I thought it was like Chrome taking up a shit ton of memory. But it turns out it's this glitching. Nice! I have yet to have an issue with Google Chrome since I got 32 fucking gigs of RAM.
Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about my opinion on non-binary people. Everyone is asking for my opinion, and I guess some misinformation was being spread, so let's get into the video. Basically, people accusing me of believing things that I don't believe, putting words in my mouth, bringing up things that I believed a long time ago. I don't think it should come to anyone as a shock that I used to not believe in non-binary. There was a time when I first went from being like SJW to transmed, where I was like, transgender people are only binary, non-binary people are just confused cis people, or non-binary people are just confused trans people, there's no in between. And I guess people think that—
Well, that's not transmed, that's being a true scum. Being transmed means you believe someone has to have gender dysphoria to be trans, which is incorrect, just definitionally speaking.
That my opinions on these things have never changed since I said something in the past, which is not the case. I know people are gonna come on here and say that I'm lying, or that I'm saying what I'm saying for more positive attention or whatever.
I believe you, Kalvin. Can we get a hashtag believe Kalvin going in chat? I believe you.
I really have no incentive to lie about my opinions on this type of thing. Actually, I think the majority of my audience and the people who watch my videos might actually disagree with me on this. Or not, I don't actually know. But I'm just gonna be straight up with you guys, because I don't think I've ever made a video where I was literally just straight up honest with my opinion on this topic. I don't really talk about it a lot because I feel like I've made my position on this pretty clear, but I guess not, considering people love to put words in my mouth. So here is my honest opinion on non-binary people, on non-binary...
So regardless of what he's going to say here, I don't know actually, when was this video made? 2019? Okay, so this was like a year ago actually. This is May 7th, 2019. This would have come out around the time I made my original video on Kalvin. So regardless of what he's about to say here, this doesn't change the fact that his content contributes significantly to a very NB-phobic worldview, right? Like the idea that there's these trans trenders, and usually the people that he calls trans trenders tend to be non-binary. So regardless of whether or not he personally believes that non-binary people are valid, when you make a body of work, when you put out a ton of content, and that content generally has a negative stilt towards non-binary people, it doesn't really matter what you personally believe. The outcomes of your actions are what actually matter.
Binary dysphoria on my opinions on this. Again, this is my opinion, so I'm not saying that we have to agree. I'm not saying that you have to like what I said. I'm not trying to sit here and pull out the list of factually why I'm correct, because to start off my argument...
Oh shit, I actually wanted that though. Wait, no, I actually want him to bring out why he's factually correct about these things. That's what I would prefer. I like arguing with that shit. I mean, okay, we can argue over opinion, but maybe we won't. Maybe we'll agree. I don't know. I haven't seen this video before. People have just been recommending it.
Is actually no medical, scientific evidence, really. I know people are going to come on here and say, oh, well, there is evidence, and I'm telling you, an article that a non-binary person wrote, somehow using another study to, like, hypothetically prove all of this stuff, does not count as scientific or medical evidence. I'm talking about scientific studies, things that would allow doctors and scientists to make a damning argument as to why this is all scientifically valid. But again, keep watching. I'm just making this point to say I've been sent these articles that just are not actual medical or scientific proof. Of course,
My man Calvin, do I have a deal for you, my friend? Because guess what? I'm a fact man. I love facts, I love studies, and I love science. We got the art. I love this document. Whenever I go to fucking Seattle, I'm gonna give Vosh a big hug for me, because this document has been so useful for so many reasons in so many scenarios. Yes, so this is an incomplete list of reputable scientific and social organizations which affirm the validity of transgender people. That includes non-binary people, by the way. That transness is not a mental illness. Oh, fuck! I should have brought that up in my debate earlier with the Palmer guy. That trans people are deserving of respect and equal rights, etc. This also serves as a list of the institutions which recognize the difference between sex and gender. So sex and gender aren't the same thing. Gender is socially constructed, which necessitates the validity of non-binary people. The American Psychological Association, the American Medical Association, American Psychoanalytic Association, the Human Rights Campaign, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Osteopathic Pediatricians, the United Nations, and finally, the United Kingdom's National Health Service. Even in fucking Turf Island, the UK, they recognize the difference between sex and gender and the validity of trans people. It's crazy. It's almost like transphobia is unscientific. So non-binary people and their validity, and just trans people in general, is backed up by science. I don't know, maybe the United Nations is all just like a bunch of NBs up there, and they're manipulating the studies and the science to try to claim that non-binary people are valid, but the data does exist. I'm sorry if Calvin has had studies sent his way that aren't scientific, that are just like articles and whatnot, but I'm a fact man, and I brought the facts on the table. I'm slamming them down.
of course, there's accounts of people identifying as that way for a while, and that does not include two-spirit people. I have talked to so many people who are within that heritage of
Two-spirit's a whole different thing. It is an example of a non-binary gender identity, or a non... Yeah, I mean, technically it is a non-binary gender identity. Two-spirit is kind of its own thing, but it's an example of a different culture or society, since gender is socially constructed, recognizing different genders than just men and women. It's an example. It's not exactly what we think of when we say non-binary, but it is an example.
The two-spirit world, and no two-spirit people who literally say two-spirit's not a third gender. It's not some way to validate what these people say.
Well, this is really weird, because true scum types will always say, oh, but what's a third gender? Are non-binary a third gender? It's not really like that, right? It's like saying there's only two numbers, 1 and 2. And I'm like, well, so there's an infinite amount of numbers between 1 and 2. And they're like, oh, name the third number. I'm like, well, there's 1.1, 1.02, 1.3, there's an infinite amount of numbers between each number. It's kind of like that with gender, right? It's really reductive to say, oh, name a third gender. It's like, okay, I can name a shit ton, but when something is socially constructed, there's an infinite potentiality for new gender identities based on what a particular culture or society recognizes.
But with all that being said, you have to take into consideration that there was a time in which people didn't have evidence or scientific reasoning behind binary trans people. We now know pretty definitively, and it's pretty widely accepted, that the reason trans people exist is because of your hormones in the womb being out of funk. I don't really know the entire details of it. I'd have to make a whole video where I do research and lay down the facts on that. I haven't done that yet. I don't know if I'm ever really planning to do that. But the fact is, there was a time period in which trans people were like, hey, we all feel this way. We don't really...
This is where I kind of have to empathize with true scum types a bit. Because it really is difficult to argue for the validity of binary trans people without... I can still do it, but you have to be a pretty skilled rhetorician, and you have to have done a shit ton of research like I have, to argue for the validity of binary trans people without going into the transmedicalism. It's so easy to say pink brain, blue body, or just gender dysphoria. You can just point to that and say that's what makes you trans, and if you have it, then that's all good for you. You can argue fairly effectively from that perspective for your validity if you have it, right? The problem is, one, it technically isn't scientifically backed up. Like transmedicalism, I know it's called transmedicalism. You would think it would be, but it's not. The problem is it's very reductive. It's way more difficult to argue, and you need to have done a shit ton more research to actually defend the entire body of of science around being transgender, right? So for starters, this is a hard sell for people. Gender and sex aren't the same thing. That is, for many people, an impossible sell. I'm pretty sure 50% of people in society, no matter how many studies I threw their way, just wouldn't agree with this. No matter how, like, even though this is just established medical science, like that is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, right? Second one, gender is a social construct. Basically is the same as like sex and gender aren't the same thing. The problem is that gender as a social construct has become such like a buzzword or a buzz phrase that people revolt and like recoil at the thought of or at the mention of that phrase, right? They don't know what it means. They think it means gender isn't real, right? When it just means that it's socially constructed. It's like language. It's real, but the society and culture you're in is what kind of recognizes something as valid, right? Another one is that non-binary people are valid because gender is socially constructed, and because gender is socially constructed, it means there is an infinite potentiality for gender identities, which by necessity includes non-binary people. On top of that, non-binary is just an umbrella term for non-binary gender identities. A gender identity that doesn't fall within man or woman, right? Any other gender identity counts as non-binary. Non-binary is an umbrella term. Within an umbrella term, transgender by definition, is an umbrella term referring to people who identify as a gender different from the one they were assigned at birth, which means if you were born and assigned male at birth, or man at birth usually, and you identify as a gender that is not that, including non-binary, you are transgender. Just by definition. This is the medically established definition. But I do understand the true scum perspective of, like, it's so easy to argue from the transmedicalist standpoint, because while it is incorrect, it's really easy to just say, I have a female brain in a male body, or I have a male brain in a female body, right? It's so easy, because if you're going to argue the actual case, or the actual science, it's like, it takes a lot more fidelity in your debate skill, as you guys saw before, and it takes a lot more research. I mean, like, to back up my points, like, there's literally, like, you have to have done a pretty significant amount of research with the entirety of all of this data to be able to hold out in a debate with somebody who's, like, skeptical about the validity of trans people. But if I was a true scum, all I would have to say is, gender dysphoria exists, it's recognized by the medical community, that's what makes trans people valid. Even if it's not true, it's easier. So I can kind of empathize, just a little bit.
Sounds stupid. I mean, there's so many people that are experiencing this. It makes sense, and then eventually the evidence and the science and the medicine behind it was kind of figured out, still is being figured out. And so for a long time, I was under this not open-minded view that non-binary, that doesn't make sense to me, so it doesn't make sense at all. And I will say that if it wasn't for me meeting dysphoric non-binary people, I would probably still be in that mindset. Really quickly, I'm going to give you guys a couple...
Oh, so he's still doing the whole, like, you have to have dysphoria to be trans meme? Yes, there are dysphoric non-binary people. This is the problem. He's come to a somewhat correct position, but through the wrong path, right? Like, non-binary people aren't valid because they have dysphoria, or some of them have dysphoria. They're valid because gender is socially constructed, and if you identify as something, you're that thing when it comes to gender. A huge part of your gender is how you identify. There is obviously presentation. That's obviously a pretty important part of being a particular gender, but a huge part of it, I would say roughly half of it, is how you identify. If you identify as a woman, you're a woman. Now, obviously, people who identify as a woman go out of their way to present as one as well, but, you know, that's a huge part of it. Identifying as something is a huge part of being that thing when it comes to gender identity.
Of definitions for what
it's literally called gender identity.
Believe. By the way, if somebody stumbles across this video who doesn't subscribe to me, I'm transgender, and FTM. So it's not like I'm some random cis guy being like, oh, yeah, non-binary, this is my opinion. No, I'm a trans guy. In my opinion,
Alright, I know why he's pointing it out, but I would like to say, a lot of, like, the true scum types like to bust out the fact that they're trans as, like, an argument, as, like, a debunking to any criticism they may receive. Listen, it doesn't matter that you're trans in this argument. You can be trans and transphobic. Being trans is not a defense against an accusation of some kind of NB-phobia or transphobia. I can't tell you the amount of times I've debated trans people. I've seen debates between like true scums that are like trans and heard them say, "I can't be trans or I can't be transphobic. I'm trans." Yeah, you'll also get like the it goes out of this as well. Like it goes to other things as well. Like you'll hear as a black man, right? Like you'll hear somebody who wants to defend the racist actions of somebody as like a white dude by saying, well, as a black man, I'm personally not offended by it." Like, right? Like, yeah, all right. Don't use that's called identity politics, and it's very cringe.
transgender would be anybody that identifies as a gender that is different than the one assigned to them at birth. And then non-binary would be...
Oh, shit, wait. Is he actually spitting facts here? Let's see.
Transgender would be anybody that identifies as a gender that is different than the one assigned to them at birth. And then non-binary...
That is word for word the definition. That is word for word the definition of transgender. That's true. That's based, Kalvin Garrah. You're right. 100% right on that.
Binary would be somebody who is not male or female.
Not exactly. Non-binary is referring to your gender identity. Male and female, those are that has to do with biological sex. So non-binary people, you were close. Non-binary has to do with identifying as a gender that isn't man or woman, or like girl or boy, right? Like, or one of the other colloquial terms we have for just men and women, right? Close, but not exactly.
I don't believe in all these crazy genders people come up with. I will concede that. I do not believe in really any other genders. I also want to say, going along...
Wait, non-binary is one of those other genders. Wait, like what? Like, okay. We've already talked about this before. I feel like I've gone over this, but I should clarify. I've never met somebody who identifies as like I've never met someone who uses like Z-zer pronouns, for example.
Most transmeds Truscums don't recognize gender incongruence. Gender incongruence is the persistent feeling of being another gender without distress. IDK if this is on the document, so sorry if it is.
I don't think it was, but that's a pretty interesting factoid. Thank you, Angry Phantom, for the $10 super chat. I appreciate it. I love you. Thank you. Very, very appreciated. Yeah, but as he was saying before, I've never met somebody who uses like Z-zer pronouns or something. I just never have. Like every non-binary person I've ever encountered, even like the most like woke scolding non-binary people I meet on Twitter, like don't use that really. It doesn't even matter if they did. Like it's still, I use Z-zer and I've known you since October. I don't know if you're fucking with me or not, Owl, but even if that's the case, that doesn't really invalidate them, though, right? Like, most non-binary people just choose to go with they, them. And even those other gender identities aren't invalid, because as we've established already, I feel like I've done a pretty good job of, isn't it Zer with an X? I don't know. As we've already established, isn't, like, all gender identities are valid as long as it's recognized in a particular social space or culture. I mean, that's how, like, the same way with Two-Spirit, right? And he's wrong about the Two-Spirit thing, right? Like, about it not being a third gender. It's not a binary gender identity, so it is a non-binary gender identity. It's complicated. Sakusa, I think is how it's pronounced. Thank you for the $5. I appreciate it, my friend. Very appreciated. All right, let's continue the video.
With this, I do not believe in gender fluidity. I think that it's possible for your dysphoria to fluctuate. This has happened to me. Sometimes my dysphoria is worse.
I'm pretty sure gender fluidity is recognized by... the medical community. Medical consensus gender fluidity. Oh shit.
NB here. Neopronouns are hella rare, even in hyperwoke, all trans spaces.
That's true, and there's nothing wrong with them, but they do like to be taken as like an example of like the trans is going too far, right? Like neopronouns. They're just not something that a lot of people like even use nowadays, you know? Thank you for the tier 1 sub though, Mylonius. I love you. Thank you for the support. Xander Hall, since when do I bullshit you? I love you, Al. It's okay. Let's see. Here's Harvard. What does Harvard think of gender fluidity? I wanted to thank you for this article. I have 2 trans teenagers. My 18-year-old I have gave up for adoption, and we recently reconnected. My 15-year-old, who I've raised from birth. I myself identified as either bigender or gender fluid at a young age. If the term existed back then, I identify now as demigirl. My teens are both gender fluid, but lean more towards FTM. I have people of PCOS, so I produce more testosterone than your typical woman. I have 2 older cis daughters who were born prior to me developing PCOS. This article makes a lot more sense to me now. So apparently this article explains the tendency for gender fluidity. It's all in your head except for when it's not. Interesting. Well, chat, looks like I'm reading this off stream, because this seems like it's going to be pretty interesting for arguments defending the validity of gender fluid people. From my understanding, gender fluidity seems to be all about, like, your gender identity not being set in stone, which seems fine, right? Like, obviously, your levels of comfortability, if that's a word, with a certain gender identity can fluctuate. I don't see an issue with that, right? Link, please. It's, look up medical... I already closed it, guys. Come on. Do I have to... Nah, I'm not bringing it back up. Fuck you. We're continuing the video. It's from Harvard.edu. Look up Harvard gender fluid, okay? And you'll find
days
it.
than other days, but that doesn't mean that your gender is changing. I don't think that the gender that you are can change. I think it's kind of set in stone when you are born. Or
Well, your gender is just how you identify for the most part, so no, it does change.
when your brain develops. If you identify...
Wait, it's set in stone when your brain develops? What? There's no science to back this up.
I don't think that the gender that you are can change. I think it's kind of set in stone when you are born or when your brain develops. If you identify as gender fluid and, you know, you have dysphoria and you want me to call you they and stuff, obviously I'm going to be respectful, but frankly, to be honest, I just don't understand how that could ever be scientifically shown or even plausible that your...
My friend, you would be surprised at what science can show. I don't think Kalvin Garrah has done, like, a shit ton of research in this, and I wonder if, like, Kalvin Garrah is somebody who, if I talked to him, he would change his opinions on this, right? Like, do you think he would do that? Like, if I... Oh, wait, somebody in chat has to, has a study. They have an article. What? Alright, fuck you. Never send me a 404 link again, or I'll ban you. Alright, never mind. Let's continue.
brain could just randomly change genders. Like, I do not...
JK, I love you. Okay, wait. No, your brain doesn't just change genders. You identify as a different gender identity. That's how gender fluidity works. Your gender isn't set in stone in your brain. You can obviously have gender dysphoria, and that can sort of give you an incentive to identify as a different gender, right? And you feel most comfortable. You experience euphoria when you identify as a particular identity. But doesn't mean, like, your gender isn't set in stone in your brain. It's socially constructed.
not think that that is a thing.
Gender is stored in the balls, actually. It's not set in your brain, it's stored in the balls. You got me.
That is actually plausible. So, a lot of people were asking me my opinion on that, and I didn't really clarify in the video. So I guess you could say I believe there's only two genders, male, female, because I feel like a lot of these genders that people come up with and make up on Tumblr and stuff like that, they originate from expression. It's not about how you feel, because I don't really...
Wait, it literally is about how you feel. Expression is part of it, don't get me wrong. Hey, you're a trans woman, a lot of it is presentation. A lot of trans people, well, any just trans identity, right? A lot of trans people put a significant amount of work into presenting themselves in a particular way for, I mean, obvious reasons, right? However, most of them were identifying as a woman well before they came out and started presenting as a woman. And I think it would be pretty unfair and pretty incorrect to have like a trans person who is closeted come to you and be like, "Hey, I'm still in the closet, like I'm not presenting as like female or as like a woman yet, but like I identify as a woman." Like I don't think it would be like I don't feel like Calvin would feel comfortable saying, "Well, you're not presenting as a woman to society and society doesn't recognize you as a woman, so you're not a woman yet. So I'm sorry, can't do anything for you there." I feel like I don't know. I don't feel like Calvin is like Blair White levels of just a dick, right? I don't feel like he's as much of an asshole as Blair White, who like goes out of her way to misgender passing trans women, right? I don't know. I feel like Kalvin Garrah is a bit more genuine.
Really think it's conceivable that you could just feel 75% female or 79% female. Like,
That's a really weird way to try to quantify gender fluidity. I don't think it works that way. It's so reductive. Like saying I feel 50% male today and 50% female today. I don't think it's how it works. He and his fans have bullied NBs to the brink of suicide. I know that, Melonius, but maybe we can get him. Okay, we'll see.
I think that you could be, I definitely don't feel male or female, but I'm more masculine or I'm more feminine. That's why I don't believe you can be a non-binary boy. You cannot be a non-binary girl.
Gender is a spectrum, not a gradient of MF. Well, yeah, gender is a spectrum. Well, a spectrum can include a gradient, but I don't think it's a gradient. I think depending on, it's complicated, okay? So depending on like what society, let's say that we're going off the preconceived notions that we have, like you have masculine and you have feminine, right? Basically any non-binary gender identity is going to fall somewhere between masculine and feminine, just because that's how generally we in this society recognize like gender, right? So obviously it's going to fall in between somewhere there, but it's still a spectrum, even if it is seen more as a gradient of masculine and feminine, right? But it's fucking, it's complicated, okay? That's the problem. That's the main problem I have with like people like Kalvin Garrah. He's like way oversimplifying these issues. It's so unbelievably complicated. There's so much science and so much study and like so much nuance behind it that people like Calvin have this tendency to like oversimplify it and say, "Oh, I'm either 50% this or 20% that. I don't think that's real," or "Oh, you have to have gender dysphoria to be trans." It's just there's way more data behind it and way more studies behind it that just it's just not that simple.
Girl, those are contradicting statements. You can't be a non-binary lesbian because a lesbian.
Yes, you can be. There are non-binary people that identify more like non-binary women, right? Like they identify more on like the women's side, right? But they're still non-binary, right? But they present as like as female, right? Like generally, right? I think the best example of this is I mean the only non-binary lesbian I know personally is Liability Lefty, and well, we have our differences. We definitely have our differences. They still seem like they're a good person and whatnot, so I've talked to them and they're pretty nice. They present, for the most part, as like feminine, right? But they're a lesbian. They're a non-binary lesbian that they present in that way, but they identify as non-binary. So yeah, that's just one example off the top of my head.
Lesbian is a woman who likes other women. If you're non-binary, you're not a woman, you're not a man. If you identify,
I mean, you can identify closer to women. It's way more complicated than just you're a woman, and if you like women, that makes you lesbian. It's really complicated. I personally think Calvin is having a hard time understanding non-binary people because they blur the dichotomy between man and woman, and Calvin hates his past femininity. Yeah, it's possible, but I think it's more so just the idea that a lot of us are just sort of like, we have this like really binary worldview set in place, like it's either masculine or feminine, and anyone who breaks out of that is really confusing. And it's really easy to chalk it up as they're crazy and delusional, rather than trying to like look into the data and the science behind it, right? It's really complicated.
identify as non-binary, because you don't identify as either gender, that would mean then that you don't identify
Either gender. Oh no. No, it's not either. It's just what man or woman. It's fucking. Oh god, he's oversimplifying everything here.
with the gender you were assigned at birth, and therefore that would make non-binary people transgender. I also really believe that in order to be transgender, you have to
Here
have gender
comes-
dysphoria, which is the whole born
I'm sorry, but like the medical community disagrees on this idea that you have to have dysphoria to be trans. There's just no medical backing to this. Now, don't get me wrong, gender dysphoria may be a reason why you may choose to be trans, but you do not need gender dysphoria to be trans. It's just it can be a reason that you may transition, but I mean, this isn't backed up by the medical community.
Born in the wrong body, born as the wrong gender, whether that is, you know, the way you feel about your body, the way you feel about the way you're perceived. It all kind of has to do with your body. But the way I view gender dysphoria is that if I am just alone, looking in a mirror, like at my naked body, which I hate to do, I've always known, with no other influence.
Honestly, same, my friend. Honestly, same. Except for my dick. I'm fine with my dick. But sometimes I'll look at myself in the mirror after I get out of the shower and I'll be like, oh god. Years of like a year of streaming and just staying at home all day on a computer has really fucked me up. I'm not gonna lie. I used to be like in really good shape. I when I was in high school, I was a swimmer, right? So I was in really, really good shape. I have old pictures of myself from back then. Who knows? I might show them on stream one day. And like videos of me on the swim team back when I was in high school. Sometimes I'll like look at myself and I'll be like, I used to be so fucking muscular. I really need to get back to the gym. When this quarantine shit is over and gyms reopen and I'm moved in California, whew, it's gonna be grind time, alright? Closeted trans, next Contra, find out next time on Dragon Ball Z. No, I'm not trans. No matter how many... Guys, no matter how much you try to make me be trans, I'm not gonna be trans. I'm sorry. I'm not an egg. It's not happening.
That I would be more comfortable with a cis male body than a cis female body, which has literally been proven to me through transitioning. The closer that I get to having a cis male body, which is, you know, flat chest, more masculine ratio of body, and, you know, a dick, I've become more comfortable. It has nothing to do with society, it has nothing to do with gender roles, it has nothing to do with any of this bullshit that anti-trans people come up with. It's literally a personal struggle. It is something that I know within myself. I'm going on a...
My man Kalvin, one day you're gonna have the biggest dick and the fucking and pecs, and you're gonna be muscular. You're gonna look like a bodybuilder, my friend. But only if you come onto my stream and engage in the battle of ideas and we have a bit of a chat. I promise you, if you talk to me, my very presence will cause you to sprout a dick. It'll happen. The big 12-incher just fucking dangling down as soon as you talk to me. If you come onto my stream, I promise you. But only if you do that.
A whole tangent, but I was fine being a girl in the sense that I was not bullied for being a masculine girl. I was never shamed for being a girl. I was never, like, catcalled or objectified. No, it was a personal thing. I knew that I would be more comfortable living as a man, having the body of a man. So, with that out of the way...
And Kalvin, you are a man. Simple as that. You're a man. Even if you stop doing anything to transition today, I'd still see you as a man. And that's the society that I strive for. As a leftist political figure that advocates for trans rights, I advocate for a society where you can be seen as the gender you identify as soon as you start identifying as that gender. That's what I would like to see one day. But who knows?
Anyway, my opinion is that if you identify as non-binary, you are transgender. Because you're not identifying with your birth gender.
Beast! Fucking based! That is 100% true. Lines up 100% with the current medical consensus and the scientific definition of being transgender. That is just correct. What he just said is 100% correct.
To me, that would basically be saying, since non-binary people are transgender, you would have to have dysphoria to be non-binary. So
oh, he's so close! He's so close! Ah, it sucks because he was going right there for a little bit. He was on the right track, but then he just kind of rolled right off. Fuck. He was so close. He was so fucking close. Listen, Kalvin Garrah, you almost got it, my dude. You almost got it. Come onto my stream and talk to me. We can work it out because you're this close. I just gotta give you a little nudge in the right direction. You'll find it, all right? We're so close, my man. We're so close.
So transgender to me, you have transgender, and then you have binary, and you have non-binary, right? Two types of trans people. Regardless of which one you are, you have to have dysphoria. Because
no, it's just not backed up by the medical consensus. I'm sorry. Not having dysphoria can be a reason for being trans, like that dysphoria may cause you to identify as a different gender, which is what makes you trans, but I'm sorry, there is no medical backing to the necessity of gender dysphoria to be trans.
Again, whether you're changing to the complete opposite gender or you're changing to something in between, neither one fully, you still have to have a reason to do that. There still has to be a...
The reason could be euphoria. Maybe you don't feel particularly uncomfortable with your current gender identity, but you feel more comfortable in general, or you feel some sort of euphoria identifying as a different identity. It just feels like it fits you more, but you don't really feel dysphoria, right? Like you don't feel like suicidal or depressed or upset by your current identity. You just know you could be better, right? Like for me right now, I'm going to use it as like, I'm going to use a computer analogy, right? Like my current PC is my dream computer, just about, right? Like, this computer is fucking phenomenal, right? I got a 2080 Ti in it, 32 gigs of RAM, a Ryzen 9 3900X. This PC is an absolute monster, right? But even though I feel no discomfort and I'm not upset at my PC's current performance or its current position, I would probably feel way happier if I had dual 2080 Ti's running an SLI with a full custom water-cooled rig. I don't need it. I don't feel upset in my current position. I'm completely happy where I am now, but I would be happier if I had an even better computer. That's basically the analogy I like to make. It's obviously very reductive, but I think it's a good analogy.
A personal thing about yourself that you feel as though you need to change to feel fulfilled in life.
Wait, 2080 Ti's perform worse than SLI? Illogical problems? I know that's not true. What actually happens is, from my knowledge, most games don't support SLI anymore. It seems like NVLink is what like Nvidia and whatnot are leaning more towards now. The problem is the 2080 Ti doesn't support NVLink yet. I'm really hoping the 3080s support NVLink, because NVLink is like what SLI should have been, but that... Alright, we're not moving this into some nerdy computer talk, okay? Let's continue. Yeah, NBLink, yeah, that's actually what it means, NBLink. Now it's NV, like letter N, letter V. Main reason most trans girls transition is to make dress go spinny. That's true. That's actually true. All trans girls only ever transition because they want dress to go whee whenever they spin around.
Now, I'm not saying that everybody has to medically transition. I used to be under that mindset, but I understand not wanting to put hormones in your body or not wanting to go and get surgery. It's a completely understandable life choice. But I still believe that if you are okay with passing, this is more for binary people. If you're okay with not passing as male, let's say that you don't want to be viewed as male, but like you're trans somehow, no. Any trans...
I mean, wait, no, there's tons of reasons why you may not want to present, or maybe you want to, but you don't present as the gender that you identify as. Maybe you're scared of how society treats trans people, so you're in the closet. Maybe you're just scared of how your family and friends treat trans people, so you're in the closet. Like, I mean, there's tons of reasons. Wait, does not passing or having a reason for why you don't try to pass make you not trans?
Person, at the least, on the lowest bar, is going to want to pass to the highest extent that they can as the gender they are.
Well, wanting to and having reasons for why you don't do it are different, right? Like it's more complicated than that, right? Like maybe your like family is super transphobic and you're like, fuck, if I come out and I start dressing up, if I start wearing dresses and shit and like growing out my hair, my family is going to figure out what's going on and they're going to fucking disown me or like abuse me or some shit, right? It's complicated.
Identify as, or else you would be uncomfortable. So obviously, in today's society, I'm sorry, people aren't just gonna randomly call you they. I mean, there might be a small portion of people who will. I feel like, at least for me, if I saw someone who is very androgynous looking, I would probably refer to them as they, just because.
Sure, and that's valid, and the argument you're making, so the descriptive statement you're making is true, right? Generally, people in society aren't going to, like, call you they, them. However, that isn't an argument for why we shouldn't call people they, them. It's an argument for why we should try to make non-binary people feel more accepted so that, and like be more recognized, that society is more, people in society are more likely to refer to people as they, them if they feel comfortable with that. And there's nothing wrong with accidentally misgendering somebody on the street, by the way. Like you're not a bad person if you walk up to somebody who's like non-binary but presents like masculine or feminine on the street and then like misgendering them, but then they say, oh yeah, by the way, I go by they, them, and then you're like, oh, okay, sorry, I fucked it up. Maybe you might mess it up once or twice. I certainly have with certain non-binary people who present in a certain way. Maybe you'll mess it up once or twice, but if you like go out of your way to misgender those people, like a person who's told you their pronouns, like if you go out of your way to do it, then that's pretty fucked up. Like you're in some yikesy territory there, to say the least. But if you just mess up, like you didn't know, or you accidentally like slip up with your words, that's a whole different thing.
As a tranny, I'm conditioned to do that
Neat.
now. But by nature, we are wired to look at somebody and then decide, you know, off of appearance.
I mean, hey, if he's taking back the T slur, there's not much I can do about that. I'm a cis dude. I don't really get offended by people using the T slur if they're not using it in a particularly hateful way. It seems like a sort of like I'm taking it back kind of thing. I mean, ContraPoints says it, and we don't really rag on her. So ContraPoints doesn't have a history of like being a true scum. So I don't know. All right, let's continue.
Is that a boy or is that a girl? And then use those pronouns. Which is why, by the way, pronouns do have gender. People have been coming out the cut saying that pronouns have no gender, which is why he, him, lesbians exist. All of that is bullshit.
I don't. No comment. I don't know enough about this controversy to speak on it. That seems a bit too into gender theory for me to speak on it. I don't have the data. That's just at that point it's like, why do you care, right? You know? Like does it really bother you that there's he him lesbians? Like why not? What he's saying has happened. Yeah, but I don't know enough about it to have to like comment on it. I'm not going to have like a strong opinion on this thing that I don't know enough about to have like an opinion on, right?
Shit to me. But yeah, I will say I used to be really, really ignorant on the topic, and even then, I think that non-binary is the most.
That is true. Pronouns don't equal gender, right? Like if you identify as a man but go by she her pronouns, doesn't necessarily make you. It doesn't make you a woman. You still identify as a man, right? There's a lot of reasons why you might go by pronouns that don't line up with your gender identity. Like it's so complicated. Gender is a really that's why so many people are gender abolitionists, because gender is so dumb and complicated, right? Like I don't know.
Most appropriated identity of them all. I mean, there's plenty of people that appropriate trans people and say that they're trans when they are absolutely not transgender, and definitely
Appropriate trans people? Being transgender by definition it's an umbrella term. It includes a shit ton of identities, both binary and non-binary. You don't appropriate being trans. What?
never experience what actual transgender people experience on a day-to-day basis. But in today's day and age, whether you want to hear it or not, every single fucking, like, 15-year-old girl on Tumblr that thinks that just because they are, like, androgynous or like to dress more masculine, that somehow makes them non-binary. To me, non-binary...
Can we not use, like, fucking, not hyperbole, anecdotal examples of just people on Tumblr? There's a reason why every person on Tumblr seems to be trans. It's because Tumblr is an overwhelmingly left-leaning place that is going to attract more people who are left-leaning or are gender non-conforming, right? It's not like when you step into Tumblr, it makes you trans, but Tumblr has a tendency to attract people who are trans. It's like if I went to the DMV... Okay, it's like... Hold on. It's like if I went to a school and I saw that, like, 90% of people at the school are children. And I took from that, oh, school is turning people into children. And it's like, well, no. The reason why there's an overwhelming amount of children in a school is because that's where children go. School kind of attracts children to go there, right? They kind of have to go there for mandated the state, right? So it's the same argument with Tumblr, right? If you go to Tumblr, you have a higher chance of seeing a lot of trans people because Tumblr is a place that attracts trans people. It's not like being on Tumblr makes you trans.
Is not some social thing, it's not some society, you know, thing. If you don't want to be a girl, you don't want to be labeled a girl, so you're non-binary. No, like, again, to me, there would have to be a scientific medical reason behind that. And I do think that
my man Kalvin, I massively respect, wanting facts. Facts over feelings is what I like to say. Come onto my stream, we can talk about it. It'll be a good time.
It's possible, but I could not tell you what I thought that was. But I will say this, if somebody has dysphoria, imagine having dysphoria. Let's say you're born female. Let's say you have dysphoria about certain things, but being seen as a girl would make you uncomfortable, and being seen as a boy would make you uncomfortable. Maybe
yes.
you don't like having a chest, but you don't necessarily want a penis. Yes, there are trans men that don't want bottom surgery, but I'm talking about like a non-binary hypothetical person here. I just couldn't imagine having dysphoria and being unsure of like to what extent I needed to transition to alleviate it the best of my ability. And if me calling somebody they is going to alleviate someone's dysphoria, obviously I will do that. If me calling somebody a gender neutral name is going to alleviate their dysphoria to the best of, my ability, I'm going to do that. Because
Admirable, I guess. I mean, that's not necessarily the same as accepting them and believing that they are valid as their gender identity. Like, it would be like if somebody was just calling you by he, him because they respect you, but they don't actually see you as a guy. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you wouldn't care as much because that doesn't, like, you don't think it really affects you. But I do definitely think that that's not necessarily 100%, like, it's sort of like the your dad thing, right? Like, it's like, I don't have a problem with gay people as long as they don't do it anywhere near me. It's like, well, then you're not really okay with gay people so much as you're like fine with them as long as they aren't as long as you aren't reminded of their existence, right? I don't know. I'm not sure if that's exactly what he's saying here, but it does kind of remind me of that.
Because at the end of the day, I don't want anybody to have to experience dysphoria. It's not fun, and I think my biggest pet peeve in life is people saying they have dysphoria if they very clearly don't. I'm looking at you, goth fruits. But yeah, I think that...
Who? Is that like a person? Is that a person or like a derogatory term or like a group of people or a community or something? Who is that? What is goth fruits? Does anybody know who he's referring to? Goth Fruits is a person? I I have no idea who this person is. Should I look them up and see what their deal is? Who what they look they look pretty fucking cute. I don't know, this person looks pretty non-binary to me. Yeah, I don't wait, why is this person not valid? Do they identify as non-binary? I'm pretty sure they do. So then they're non-binary. You're so close, Calvin. You're so close. You're so close. We just got to get that you have to have gender dysphoria to be trans thing out of the way, and we can fucking move forward. It'll be awesome. Help me out, my dude.
that
Come on my stream.
theoretically non-binary people would be more rare than FTM or MTF people. Again, I'm not saying that any of this is fact. This is just my opinion on it. This is what I...
Hey, that's fine. Like, come onto my stream or talk to me like in DMs or something. Like, we don't even have to do it on stream if you don't want to. And I will gladly like show you the data that backs up my point of view, because I like to base my opinion on like the studies and the facts that I have seen about the subject. I mean, like, if I don't know enough about something, I'm not going to have an opinion on it, or I'm not going to have a strong opinion on it, right? I will gladly present the data that backs up my worldview to you. I will gladly, if you talk to me, I will gladly do it. It doesn't have to be mean. We don't have to do any blood sports. It can be productive. We can have a good time. It can be fun. I think it'd be nice. Pretty sure Goth Fruits is a trans guy, and that's why he hates them. I don't know. I don't know. All right, let's continue.
have developed, and I've had this opinion for a pretty long time now. I think it mostly formed to me, and I kind of believed it before I met this person, but I think what really solidified it for me is I do have a friend named Oslo, and they are a model. They do like high fashion modeling. They don't identify as female, obviously, but they also don't fully identify as male. They're somewhere, in that middle area between male and female, but they present more masculinely. A masculine non-binary person, not a non-binary male. They would be a masculine non-binary person, and
well, both of those would be valid.
They do runway fashion for men's and women's. I've become really pretty close with them, and they just tell me a lot of stuff about how they feel and about their dysphoria and what they want to do for transition wise, and it makes a lot of sense to me, and I really do like support them, and I want them to be able to alleviate their dysphoria to the best of their ability. And I feel like if I was in that position where I didn't completely feel male, but I knew that I definitely was not female, I would feel definitely stuck, and I would definitely feel really insulted by girls on the internet who cut their hair short and dye it pink.
Why does it always come back to this? Like every time, it's like the haha blue hair Tumblr non-binary feminists with the bob cut Karen haircut thing and the half shaved head. Like, why does it always come down to this? Like, I guess pointing to like particular hyperbole of people behaving in a way that's kind of cringy to us is like a good way to make arguments for some people. But I like to operate within fact. I don't care about how I feel when I look at a person. I care about the medical science that backs up their validity. Yeah, pink hair means you can't be a trans man, I guess, yeah.
Pink and say that they somehow also
Also, yeah, that's true, Lonnie. Why does someone care how like someone styles their hair, right? Like, why do you care? Is it because they're not masculine enough in their presentation? They aren't really like they're a trans guy, but they aren't adhering to really masculine social behaviors. Like I know Kalvin Garrah tries his best to be like, traditionally masculine, right? He's like got a lot of the really manly tattoos, right? He's got like a knife on his knuckle, I think. I think I saw like he has a knife tattoo on his knuckle. He's got like another knife tattoo on like his forearm or something like that. Like I get that, right? Like don't get me wrong, if being as traditionally masculine as possible is what makes you feel better, alleviates your dysphoria or makes you feel good, that's fine. But there are trans guys that feel valid by being a little bit less traditionally masculine. Same goes for trans women who feel better identifying as a woman, but being a little less, identifying a little less with what is traditionally feminine. Same goes with non-binary people. Maybe they feel better with do I have chest hair? I do, but I shave it because I don't like the look of it. I shave that shit like every day when I'm in the shower. Yeah, I don't know. I just like yeah, I don't know. I don't see why it's an issue, you know?
are the same thing as me when they
The
have
cis trender, yes. If I don't have chest hair, then I am a cis trender. That's actually a pretty good meme.
no dysphoria. So that's my take on that. I'm going on the record saying this is what I believe. So if you hear anybody say anything else, it's not true, because coming from me, May 6, 2019, this is what I believe.
Chest hair is gross. I'm sorry, but I don't like well, obviously I'm not into dudes, so that wouldn't matter. But I feel like if I was into dudes, I wouldn't like chest hair because I don't like chest hair on myself. Oh shit, Mythology, thank you for the tier 1 gifted sub to Sneck God. Sex God? Sneck God, I appreciate it. Thank you for the tier 1 sub, my friend. I love you. Thank you.
You can ask any of my friends, Ryan, London, fucking Jamie, my friends that I don't even put on the internet. Let's say like Ben, my girlfriend. Like you could literally ask all these people and they would tell you.
Wow, okay, sex haver, rubbing it in. Just because I can't... Okay, listen. Just because no women like me doesn't mean you have to rub in the fact you have a girlfriend in my face. Pepe.
That this was my opinion, but alas, hopefully that cleared it up for some people. If you're a non-binary person and you have dysphoria, I support you just as much as I would any other binary trans person. Do what you...
Anyone who's been in my community knows for a long time knows that I have a hard time talking to women, am I right? Okay. Yeah, I have a girlfriend. She just goes to a different school. She just lives in a different state. Lonnie's in chat molding. It's okay. I love you all.
You need to do
It's
to
all good
transition. If going by they pronouns is gonna help you and feel less dysphoric, then by all means, I support that. I don't fucking support like Zer, all those crazy.
All right. I think we get the point. Kalvin Garrah. He's so close. He's so close to being correct. My shirt is riding up on my fucking arm. He's so close to being right. Like ridiculously close. He almost has it down, but we gotta get that you have to have dysphoria to be trans thing out of there. Listen, Calvin, if you're watching this right now, hit me up on Twitter. I'm gonna hit you up on. I'll DM you on Twitter or something, or on Instagram. I'll have my fans at you on Twitter. Don't harass them. Obviously, don't harass them. But at Kalvin Garrah on Twitter and ask him to talk to me on stream. Doesn't have to be a debate. Doesn't have to be mean or blood sporty. It can be a productive, kind discussion where I try to bring him over to my point of view, and who knows, maybe he could try to bring me over to his. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. But he's so close. But he's not quite there yet. We're gonna get him though.